Right, all you glorious gamers out there. Welcome to the PlayerStoo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayerStoo on all the social media, that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com, that's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, that really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while you're over there, if you leave us a little review as well, again, it just helps us out even more. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. You're an absolute legend to us. Alright, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
Very well, Mark. Good to see you as ever. How are you getting on?
Yeah, not bad. Hard day at work, Lewis, but very ready to talk about video games. What have you been playing this week?
This week, Mark, mainly just polishing off Oddworld Soulstorm, which was not the most pleasurable experience, I've got to say.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
It didn't improve in that second run through, no?
It did not, no. Well, actually, yeah, the thing to mention, I suppose, is that, so since talking about it last week, yeah, I got the bad ending first. I had to replay some sections to get enough Kwarma, as it's called, to unlock the 2 bonus levels. And those, had improvements in them. They felt a bit closer to Abe's Exodus in terms of you're right in the brewery and you're saving a lot of Mudokons. But the repetition of gameplay within that was obscene. It was just the same puzzle over and over and over and over again, like literally with the same solution, the same enemies, you're moving Mudokons in the same way. And then the final boss battle was one of the worst boss battles just in terms of its own gameplay that I've played in a long time, but was also just really broken.
Jesus Christ, Dan.
Yeah, it was broken and unfinished. Like, just to quickly illustrate this, while you're playing this final boss battle, the camera is panned back from the action. The sound is unhooked from that, and so you can't really hear Abe or any of the sligs and stuff that you're dealing with in the way that you normally can in the game because they're too far from the camera. And throughout all of that, one of the big bads of the whole game is on a screen in the middle of your screen watching the action. But it's not a proper CGI video or anything. It's just this weird, glitching, looping thing that, again, is desynchronized from its audio. I will have to show you this at some point, Mark. I actually thought about recording the gameplay at one point because I was just like, this can't be right. Like, it's just unfinished. The game needs several big patches. As I've said to you kind of a few times off air, it's a game that has really good moments in it, but they're just so often let down by repetitive gameplay, by broken sections, broken tech, broken AI. It just really under-delivered. I admit I went in with high hopes, maybe not high expectations, but high hopes because I love that franchise, and it just really massively disappointed me. I wouldn't recommend people buy it, certainly. If you've downloaded it for free on PS Plus and you love Abe, give it a go, see what you think. If you don't have a history with Oddworld, I would probably steer clear. And I can't remember a time that I've said that on this show as directly as that. Most games that we play, there have some saving graces, and this just really didn't.
Wow. Man, I'm really fucking sad to hear that. Like, I genuinely am, because we've said it for weeks now, but we have a very strong history with Oddworld. I was really looking forward to this game. I really wanted it to be good.
Yeah.
I really wanted it to be good, and it sounds as if it's just not that, man. Oh, dear. But Lewis, we are all about positivity here on this podcast, so I want you to end Oddworld Soulstorm by telling me one thing that you liked about the game. Go.
Oh, you could have prepped me for this.
I intentionally didn't go.
I would say it does have some really genuinely good puzzles that give you that moment of satisfaction when you solve them. It does have some of the heart of the originals, and I do think that some of the gameplay additions from those originals, and even things that have been added over and above what New and Tasty did in terms of upgrading the graphics and the look of it all. It has added some mechanics around looting and crafting and basically tooling you and your followers out a wee bit more so they can be a bit more active in the action. When those bits work, it's fun. And that's what I mean. Like, there's moments where you're like, if you built your game around some more of this and you had some more moments like this, it would be great. But it's so lacking polish that it just really brings it down.
Sounds like you're ending on a negative there again,
so those moments are good enough. That's why I've stuck with it. I mean, I've played the whole game. I've almost 100%ed it, but it was done under some stress. It's as good as I can do, Mark.
Okay, I'll let you away with that.
What have you been playing? Something more enjoyable, hopefully.
Certainly, Lewis. I've been playing Resident Evil 7 still. It was fantastic. I finished it as well. Like I said last week, I really didn't have much left to play at all, and I think I said I have about half an hour left last week, and that turned out to be almost exactly accurate. I think it was damn nearly 30 minutes that I had left to play. It's really good. I'm not going to harp on about it again. If you want to hear my thoughts, you can listen last week, but I thought it was really good. It was very, very tense in terms of what it was doing with the horror and the survival aspect. It was a very well-made game. I did think that the ending was a bit lackluster, like the actual ending to the game was a bit lackluster, and it happened very all of a sudden. But Lewis, this game has done exactly what I wanted it to do, which is get me extremely fucking hyped for Resident Evil Village, which comes out this week. Yeah. Very excited.
Nice one, yeah. I mean, it sounded like you were already enjoying it so much, so a little disappointing that that ending never quite lived up to it, but it doesn't sound like that matters all that much. It's the gameplay, isn't it?
I will say that the first half of the game is definitely better than the second half of the game, but the actual ending of the game was just a bit sort of like, oh okay, that's it, over now. You know, it just sort of happened all of a sudden, and it wasn't brilliant, to be honest, but I'm not letting that detract from what was a really fantastic game indeed. So yes, very hyped for Village. You should definitely play 7, Lewis, now that you're finished painstakingly going through Oddworld.
Yeah, that is my plan. Basically, I've got it installed. I want to play it before I play Village.
I will say it's not very long, man. No. I think my total playtime was 12 or 13 hours or something like that. Like, it's really not that long at all, so you can totally fly through it if you want to.
That's what I figured, yeah. Try and get it through it before the end of the weekend, hopefully, or close enough so that I can start Village next week, is what I was sort of thinking.
Nice one, man, definitely. Well, that is also my thoughts for next week. All right, ladies and gentlemen, time for the news. Alright, news item number 1. PlayStation have announced a new partnership with Discord, which is a twist ending, Lewis, worthy of M. Night Shyamalan, I think, because the last time we were talking about this, real contemporary reference there, by the way, for all the kids out there. Considering the last time we were talking about this a few weeks ago, we were talking about rumours that Microsoft were looking to purchase Discord for $10 billion, and now they've just announced a partnership with Sony. In a PlayStation blog post titled Announcing PlayStation's New Partnership with Discord, subheading, popular communication service will integrate with your social experience on PlayStation beginning early next year. So this is a bit down the line for us PlayStation owners. But PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan has said this.
At PlayStation, we're constantly looking for new ways to enable players around the world to connect with one another, form new friendships and communities, and share fun experiences and lasting memories. It's in this spirit that we're excited to announce a new partnership with Discord, the communication service popularised by gamers and used by more than 140 million people every month around the world. Together, our teams are already hard at work connecting Discord with your social and gaming experience on PlayStation Network. Our goal is to bring the Discord and PlayStation experiences closer together on console and mobile starting early next year, allowing friends, groups and communities to hang out, have fun and communicate more easily while playing games together.
Well, when we spoke about Microsoft buying Discord, we spoke at length about how big a deal this was for gamers who primarily played online. In reality, this isn't going to affect my life very much, and I would dare say you would be the same, Lewis. But for gamers that game primarily online, this could be a huge deal for them, you know? And I really think that this is fantastic news for people that game primarily on consoles and primarily on PlayStation, that Discord is going to be there, you know? I will say as well that there's been a lot of Twitter console wars bullshit over this, quite frankly. Okay. But there's nothing here that's saying that they can't have a partnership with Microsoft as well, Xbox gamers. But right now, it does seem to only be coming to PlayStation. We also spoke at length about how it was actually PlayStation rather than Xbox who were really in need of something like Discord as well, because historically, native party/chat features on PlayStation have been fucking dog shit, frankly. And on Xbox, they've been historically, like, I'm not going to say they're brilliant or anything, but they're like pretty good, certainly in comparison to PlayStation's. I think that this really could be a big deal. I don't know if it will ever necessarily be the primary way that you communicate on the PS5. E.g., I basically think that there will always be some sort of PlayStation native chat/party app in there. But if it could run in the background similarly to how Spotify works, I think that that would be more than enough for most people. But if it could work and use PlayStation 5's picture-in-picture mode, where you could have people from your chat at the side or whatever, or you could overlay it with your gameplay in some capacity, like something like that would be amazing. That would be incredible if they could do something like that, you know?
Yeah, we've not seen the full extent of some of those features for the PS5 that Sony announced way back when. You know, a lot of that picture-in-picture and kind of game help stuff hasn't really came out fully yet, or it isn't being talked about a lot. And so something like this would aid that for sure. I agree with your suspicion that some sort of native PlayStation infrastructure will still remain, if only because they have to future-proof in case at some point Discord collapses or gets bought by Xbox or whatever. They're not going to want to suddenly have no chat and party modes at all. But yeah, some sort of integration between them, it will be really exciting for the people who need it. Like you say, that isn't really us. We aren't online gamers predominantly. I certainly don't use Discord at all really for anything. But a lot of people do, and a lot of people will use it more if it happens to be on their PlayStation, and that might expand other gaming communities as well, because as soon as you're playing that multiplayer game that you've always played on your PlayStation with all your friends and you're using Discord, you're much more likely to join another chat about some other game or get more involved in the community more broadly. So I think for gaming across the piece, it's really good.
Absolutely. Obviously, I think that Discord has historically been dominated by PC gamers. And I mean, rightly so. I mean, it was basically for PC gamers back in the day, so totally fine. But to introduce it in an integrated fashion into the consoles like this, particularly into PlayStation, which does have a ludicrously big install base. Although, interestingly, they've not said if it's coming to last gen, so this might only be a PS5 thing. But even still, like, getting console gamers used to using Discord, and the fact that that infrastructure is already there, like you said, if you are someone who plays Call of Duty and wants to join a Discord server but is unable to access that through your PlayStation, you have to be sitting there with a laptop beside you or whatever, or however you manage that, you know, is not great, and it certainly isn't as good as having it integrated into the system. So this can only be an improvement, you know. Alright, listen, news item number 2. A whole host of documents in the Epic versus Apple lawsuit have, quotes, accidentally been published early somehow. And we've got a number of tidbits from this in terms of gaming information, but the two main headlines here are, firstly, that the Epic Game Store has gained a lot of users from free games and has gained a lot of money from exclusives. And secondly, that PlayStation are being compensated for allowing crossplay in Fortnite. Also, as a bit of a side note here, that Epic versus Apple lawsuit is kicking off this week, so get ready for some news on that next week. So starting with the first thing here, Lewis, free games and exclusives. It is no secret that the Epic Game Store have given away a lot of free games since it opened, so much so that they spent 11.7 million paying publishers to give away their games for free, and I think that was only in the first 3 months, and they gave away 38 games for free. This netted the Epic Game Store nearly 5 million new accounts at an average cost of $2.37 per account, which I would say is a pretty good return on investment for someone the size of Epic anyway, you know. The reason that is good for Epic is because when they turn around to someone like Gearbox, say, and offer them 80 million for Borderlands 3 exclusivity, which was also revealed in this document as well, it means that Gearbox can see that there is a healthy player base there to play their game. They're not just going to take this 80 million and then nobody's going to play their game. And for Epic, it means that there is a very good chance that they will recoup that 80 million, which they did, Lewis, in less than 2 weeks, unbelievably. And that only taking a cut of 12% of the profits, which is absolutely fucking wild. Making money hand over fist. This also brought them in another 1.56 million users, over 53% of which were new to the store. So, what do you make of all this, I guess? Honestly, I think that this is less interesting than it's Epic, to be honest, and it's just a bit of a peek behind the curtain of video games business as well. Why games are given away for free, how much the publishers get when a game is given away for free, and why these companies, whether it be Epic or PlayStation or whoever, make exclusives when they could be multi-platform, you know?
It is really fascinating stuff. I find this kind of look behind the curtain, as you describe it, just absolutely compelling, because it's stuff that we don't often get to see at all. You know,
stuff we never get to see. You know what I mean? Unless this was court ordered, we would never ever know these numbers.
And to get like the list of how much Epic paid for each of those 38 or whatever it was games, like, and the differences between some of them, I mean, that is so interesting to me as well, like how they're valuing it. And then I should interject here, so shout outs to Simon Carless, who originally brought light to a lot of this stuff, but there is basically a huge table out there which we will link to in the show notes at PlayersToo.com of all the games that were given away for free and the amount of money those games
were paid by Epic, whether it be the publishers or the devs or whoever.
Yeah, exactly that, yeah. And have a look at it if this stuff fascinates you as well, because to see how much something like Super Meat Boy was bought for by Epic versus how much they paid Warner Brothers for Batman Arkham Asylum and stuff like that, it's just really interesting. But to your broader point, Mark, it's not that interesting that it's Epic, except in the fact that, they've got this battle with Steam in terms of trying to... all of this is about Epic trying to get market share quickly so that they can actually compete against Steam, right? But if you park that bit for a second and you look at it as these documents, they start to show us, and we can make kind of educated guesses on what kind of money PlayStation, Xbox and Nintendo are spending on games, why it is that free games are the cornerstone of a lot of the current models for getting people involved in ecosystems, right? Like, PlayStation will be measuring the PS Plus games in this very same way in terms of how many new users sign up to the service for that, how many downloads they're getting, what the return on investment is. And so it's a real interesting look at how the business works, which, we don't get very often. And it makes for, to me at least, maybe a bit of a business geek on things like this. I think it's so interesting to see the strategy behind it all.
It really is. What I think is the most shocking thing here is that they paid 80 million, and in actual fact that's part of a wider deal that I think was 140 million or something for Gearbox games basically. But for Borderlands 3 it was 80 million to have that as an exclusive. Epic famously cut their share of the revenue to 11% on their store versus 30% on Steam and Xbox and PlayStation. And they recouped that 80 million from that game in less than 2 weeks, taking 12%. So imagine what they are making on 30. It is obscene money, absolutely obscene money, and they could all be doing with taking less as far as I'm concerned. And especially Steam, frankly, because at least Xbox and PlayStation have to justify their consoles, which they almost certainly sold at a loss or very nearly a loss, if not entirely a loss, Whereas Steam has no excuse for this. Like, they should absolutely be taking a smaller share and giving more back to the developers and giving more back into the industry. Because frankly, if Epic Games Store don't need that amount of money, Valve and Steam definitely fucking don't.
I mean, worth mentioning that the Epic Games Store is still not actually turning a profit, and Tim Sweeney says that he doesn't expect it to for the next 3 or 4 years, but then the vast amounts of money that their other parts of their business are bringing in, obviously most notably Fortnite, that's covering it. They can have the whole Epic Games Store and all of its free games as a loss leader to build an ecosystem. It's quite an interesting strategy. It's working by the looks of it. I mean, they've brought in millions of players. And not a lot of these games are really massive games either, so they're tapping into more niche communities within the gaming world, and they're building across all sorts of different genres and game types. So it's so interesting to me.
All right, Lewis, well, I guess this is technically news item number 3, but definitely a follow-on from the last story. Another person who has been rummaging around these leaked files has been Tom Warren over at The Verge, and he has discovered that PlayStation are being compensated for allowing crossplay on Fortnite. Again, I don't think that it's any secret whatsoever that PlayStation were... not keen, we will say, to introduce crossplay, and we're very late to the party versus Xbox and Nintendo, probably for the reason that PlayStation was responsible for 46.8% of Fortnite's total revenue, so an absolutely colossal amount of the money Epic make from Fortnite, which you just alluded to is a lot. Nearly half of that comes from PlayStation alone, and that was from March 2018 to July 2020. See, this is what I mean, just lots of wee tidbits here and here. So that is almost certainly still happening as well, because that is up to July last year. But at this time, PlayStation did have a huge amount of pressure on them from gamers, from devs, and from publishers to allow crossplay, and quite rightly, I have to say. This all resulted in the following email being sent to Sony from Epic's Joe Kreiner, who is the Vice President of Business Development. Now, this is quite a long one, but I think it's important to read. So, Lewis, take it away.
We love working with PlayStation, and we want this to be a win-win. The longer this drags out, it will be less so. I can't think of a scenario where Epic doesn't get what we want. That possibility went out the door when Fortnite became the biggest game on PlayStation. Here is what I propose. 1. We give you the data you're asking for and the marketing data ask. 2. Epic deeply integrates Sony's esports API into Unreal Engine 4 as an engine-level feature. We market and advertise it as a first-class citizen of the engine. Maybe an E3 announcement, and we support it in Fortnite. Number 3. We announce crossplay in conjunction with Sony. Epic goes out of its way to make Sony look like heroes. You get to pick where, when, and how. Number 4, Epic brands its E3 presence with PlayStation. We're planning a 100-player celebrity pro-am with huge after-party. Budgets I've seen are huge, and it will be the biggest event at E3. Maybe we announce with all the celebs on stage. Number 5, Epic's willing to explore more items. Maybe we commit to a game at the launch of your next VR platform. Number 6, PS Plus. Maybe we do something extra special for a month, offer a unique character or something highly valuable to drive PS Plus adoption even more. Number 7, Epic extends the Sony company-wide Unreal Engine 4 license. I don't think I've mentioned this before, but your license to use Unreal Engine 4 expires in May 2019. That license has some of the best terms we've ever offered for Unreal Engine 4. Let's make this a huge win for us all. Epic's not changing its mind on the issue, so let's just agree on it now.
Oh man, it makes my skin crawl, that letter. It really does. It's so businessy and fucking arse-kissy in a way, but also being weirdly strict in other ways. Is the most capitalistic email I think I've ever read in my life. It's horrible. It really is. Anyway, despite Epic offering Sony all of that, Sony disagreed, and Gio Corsis, the senior director of developer relations at the time, said, as you know, many companies are exploring this idea and not a single one of them can explain how cross-console play improves PlayStation's business, which again is just such a fucking arsey businessy reply that I'm just like, gamers play these games, do something good for them.
Clearly not an email that was ever supposed to see the light of day.
Oh, absolutely. None of these emails were supposed to see the light of day. Yeah. But anyway, that all changed in August 2019 when crossplay was enabled on PlayStation. But according to the very harsh words of Tom Warren, Sony viewed crossplay as, quotes, a way to potentially siphon off money from its competitors in exchange for access to PlayStation's players. Meaning that Sony are basically getting compensated, or royalties as they're calling it. Meaning that if PlayStation don't get the revenue they expect for the proportionate gamer share that they have for a specific game, the company that publishes that game or is responsible for that game has to pay them compensation. And Epic CEO Tim Sweeney has confirmed that under certain circumstances, Epic will have to pay, quotes, additional revenue to Sony. So this makes my fucking skin crawl, quite frankly. I hate all this so much, and it is a real bad look for Sony. Holy shit.
Yeah, it really is a bad look for Sony, as we say.
We say that a lot these days, but this one particularly is like, Jesus Christ, you forget that these big conglomerates that you love, and I love fucking PlayStation, but at the end of the day, it's a massive fucking huge business, and that's all they fucking care about is the bottom line, and it's just emails like this that just remind you, oh yeah, this is this fucking soulless corporation.
I mean, you'd be daft to forget that at any point. These are enormous multi-billion-dollar companies, and they don't massively care.
Sometimes I like to believe this.
That's just good branding and good marketing, really. I mean, that's the thing. Like, this is particularly embarrassing for PlayStation when they're constantly punting lines like for the players and stuff like that. You know, it's against what they would want to be seen as, but it's the most obvious and the most clear example we have that this is the way that they think. And, you know, that's been commented on plenty. The fact that Sony held out so long against cross-platform play, we all knew that it was because they saw it as a loss to their income. To play devil's advocate, I think Sony have a bit of a point there. If they're getting 50% of the players but only making 20% of the in-game spend, like, if you are Sony, you've got to look at that and say, well, this doesn't suit us. Why would we accept it? I wonder how much things have changed since they allowed cross-platform play. I mean, we don't know for certain, although it's hard to imagine that it wouldn't be the case, that this isn't the deal with other publishers of cross-platform games.
Oh, no, we do. Like, all that compensation stuff came, so far as I'm aware, in Tom Warren's article from like a PlayStation document.
I thought it was only in relation to Epic though, but I haven't seen the document itself.
Oh well, no, though that's true. I actually don't know whether it's just
hard to imagine that they've cut a deal like that with Epic and are not cutting similar deals like that for, you know, other games that have cross-platform play, particularly the major ones, your Call of Duties and stuff. So yeah, to put that point to you, I mean, as grubby as you find it, do you think that PlayStation are in the wrong? I mean, if the alternative was no cross-platform play, would it matter to you that Sony are asking for compensation effectively?
It's not even that I think it's like bad or unfair or anything like that. I just don't like it. I just don't like that this is the way that they view us as gamers, because we don't give a fuck about this. Like, we couldn't care less about this. We just want to play with our mates on another platform if they have the same game. Do you know what I mean? I don't really think that at its heart that is unreasonable. But Sony will gatekeep us PlayStation gamers away from that for their own profit, despite it being what we want. And no, I don't like that very much. I mean, the backlash from players and whatever was huge particularly when it came to Xbox, and PlayStation were still holding out. It was just like, dude, the writing is on the wall here, do you know what I mean? But even some of the stuff in that letter from the Epic guy to them is just like, it was cringy. Like, we'll go out of your way to make PlayStation look like the heroes and stuff like that. And as well, like, oh, we'll big you up when it comes to Unreal Engine 4. And as we know, when Unreal Engine 5 came out, they did that on a PlayStation 5. And I'm just like, is that all got to do with a fucking deal with crossplay over Fortnite? It's wild that, in my mind, those two things are now linked.
I mean, it's like, didn't Sony invest in Epic in the last round of fundraising? So,
well, that is true. And even at this point, Sony had investments in Epic.
I mean, it's clear that they've had an interest in partnership. From this email, at least, I mean, this is the business development person at Epic, and they are basically, well, couching it in the language of Epic will get what we want here, so just agree. It is basically begging PlayStation to play ball, it seems to me. They're offering everything that they can think of to make this deal happen. And so for that to then resulted later in more investment from Sony, it is funny, like, to see behind the curtain and it's all a bit slimy and it's all a bit drenched in money and kind of backhanded deals and stuff like that. But, this is how the sausage gets made.
I've said it before, Liz. Capitalism. Fuck it. It's real bad. An epic PSVR title would have been cool. That would have been nice.
All of those suggestions, that's the most kind of exciting one, I think.
It will be amazing if a PSVR title comes out on the new platform by Epic Games after this, because I'm just like, I don't know what is real anymore, you know? Anyway, news item number 4, Lewis. Toys for Bob, the makers of the Crash and Spyro remakes, have announced that the studio is now helping Raven Software support Warzone Season 3. This means that virtually every Activision-owned studio is now working on the Call of Duty series. This also comes amid reports of layoffs at Toys for Bob from former employees. However, Activision have said that the reports of layoffs are false and that, quotes, the studio is operating fully and has a number of full-time job openings at this time. But, I mean, at least some people, it seems, are unemployed, having had previously worked at Toys for Bob. So some people don't work there that used to, so I don't really know how you justify that. Activision have also said that the team will continue to work and support Crash 4, but, I mean, Call of Duty conquers all, it seems. To be honest, this is just a bit sad. I really thought that Toys for Bob, along with Bluepoint, I guess, had really emerged as, like, premium remake studios. Now it feels as if they've just been, like, sucked back into the machine, effectively. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what your thoughts are on this. We've not really discussed this one, but it's just sad for me. Like, it's just sad to see the entirety of Activision is just now the Call of Duty studio.
Absolutely, you know? I agree 100%. I mean, I have no particular affinity with what Toys for Bob are doing, but like you say, they made a remaster trilogy of Crash Bandicoot that went down so well that they got to make the kind of fabled new entry in the series, and that went down well as well. You know, it was critically well received. It seemed to sell well. So, like you say, it's just that Call of Duty it's too enormous. It's like a black hole that is dragging every other part of Activision into it at the moment. And you can understand why they're making that decision, but a bit like we talked about with a Jason Schreier Sony article a few weeks ago.
Absolutely. I'm very glad you brought this up because there are definite parallels here. This is so
much
interesting.
Closer. So, you know, if you missed any of that stuff, you know, the discussion there was, are Sony focusing too much on their big blockbusters and not supporting other things? And
yeah, this is like the nightmare scenario for you, right? This is like what you definitely don't want.
This is everything in a whole company being pulled into one enormous title. And I mean, I don't know the specifics of what each part of Activision are working on within Call of Duty, but you've got to imagine so much of this is just actually about supporting Warzone as it becomes, you know, one of the dominant battle royale games in the world. So it just leaves me really uninterested in what they're doing because I'm not interested in Call of Duty, you know, whereas Toys for Bob were making games that looked interesting. You know, I thought I would probably get around to playing Crash 4 at some point. Certainly was keen to see the Insane Trilogy at some point as well. So yeah, just a shame. And if people are losing their jobs over it, especially so, no, I'm not going to take Activision at their word at all on that kind of thing. So
absolutely not, Jesus. No, to be clear, I don't think that they were losing their jobs because of this. I think people were getting laid off, and this is where the studio is moving going forward, basically. And like you said, this does have similarities to what we were talking about with PlayStation Studios and how smaller studios are being made to support big studios rather than make their own games. And the reality of life is that you're not able to make all the games you want to make, unfortunately. Do you know what I mean? And some studios are support studios, and that's just what they are. Not that that's in any way a bad thing, and in actual fact, I think support studios are probably incredibly important in the development process. But for a studio to sort of revert back to that is never great, let's be honest, is it? Particularly when they were making what looked like really stellar games from Toys for Bob. Like, I'm genuinely really sad for this because they got to make Crash 4, but I don't know if we're ever going to see a Crash 5.
I would doubt it now.
And if we do, might not be from them.
No, and certainly the team will probably be totally different by that point. So yeah, it's a sad thing.
All right, Lewis, finishing off as we always do with a couple of shout-outs. Shout-out number 1, Lewis. First podcast of the month means free games, Lewis. And on PlayStation Plus this month, you're getting Battlefield 5, Stranded Deep, and Wreckfest if you're on the PlayStation 5. Bit of a dip in quality over the recent months, Lewis, I have to say. And coming to Games Pass is Dragon Quest Builders 2 on May the 4th, FIFA 21 and Steep on May the 8th, and Final Fantasy 10/10-2 HD Remaster, Just Cause 4 Reloaded, Psychonauts, Red Dead Online, and Remnant from the Ashes, all of them on May the 13th. And leaving Games Pass this month is Alan Wake, Battlefleet Goliath Armada 2, Dungeon of the Endless, Final Fantasy IX, Hotline Miami, and Plebe Quest The Crusades, which is a very dumb name for a game. They are all leaving on the 15th. And just as an extra shout out, I suppose, Xbox have announced that 74 more games now support their FPS boost, which brings the total number up to 97. So this is actually a huge announcement. This now includes a lot of the Assassin's Creed series, the Far Cry series, the LEGO games, as well as several EA games, including Titanfall 2, Battlefield 5, and Battlefront 2 as well, all of which you can now enjoy up to 120 glorious frames per second, Lewis. This is a very cool piece of technology, I think, from Xbox for like backwards compatibility games like this. It is very, very, very cool indeed. Alright, shout out number 2, Returnal has come out this week, Lewis. The reviews have been pretty positive indeed, I would say, currently sitting with an 86 on Metacritic. The major complaints about the game seem to be that it's a roguelike and that the game doesn't have a save function, which, to be fair, is incredibly fucking dumb and they should really do something about that. But overall, the game has been received very positively by reviewers and definitely set a new benchmark, I would say, for Housemarque as a studio.
Totally agree. Yeah, it's doing really well, super popular in the community, it looks like, other than that issue with the saves, which I think we'll probably talk a wee bit more about later. But I'm really keen to play it. Are you still excited to try it out? Yeah,
absolutely. It's got a copy arriving relatively soon, so yeah, I'm going to check it out at the very least. Alright, shout out number 3. New Pokemon Snap has come out this week. That new Pokemon Snap being the title, not a new Pokemon Snap, although it is also that. Currently sitting at an 80 on Metacritic, Lewis. For what the game is, let's be honest, this game was never getting 9s and 10s, but for what it is reviewed very, very well indeed. For fans of the original, it seems to be ticking a lot of those boxes. If this is something that interests you, definitely go and check it out. I must admit, I've never understood Pokemon Snap, but if you were someone who has been longing for a new one for all these years, it is finally here for you.
Seems to be plenty of people in that boat for some reason.
There really does. There are certain games that I just do not understand their popularity. Animal Crossing and Pokemon Snap are definitely two of them, but for the people out there enjoying those games, fair play to you. I'm glad there's one for you. Alright, shout out number 4. It seems that Konami will no longer be taking part in E3 2021. Konami have made this statement on Twitter.
Due to timing, we will not be ready to present at E3 this year. We want to reassure our fans that we are in deep development on a number of key projects, so please stay tuned for some updates in the coming months. While we are not participating this year, we have great respect for the ESA and know that 2021 will be a great success. We will continue to support the ESA and wish the best to all participants at this year's show.
So it seems like they are genuinely just not ready to talk about their projects at this specific time, it would appear. It is worth pointing out that on Twitter, where Lewis was reading that comment from, the first comment is from the ESA or something like that, saying it's all good, see you next year, basically. So, I mean, I don't think there's any animosity here whatsoever. Very nice to hear, again, that they are working on, quotes, a number of key projects, but a bit disappointing for E3, but nothing to be worried about, basically.
Yeah, and better that they pull out than just try and cobble together a show of stuff that isn't ready. Like, that would be worse. So.
Oh, totally, yeah, absolutely agree there, absolutely. All right, listen, finishing off on a couple of what I'm going to call mentions, because I don't want to call them full shout-outs, because we're running a bit late on time here. So, shout-out sort of number 5 is Jason Schreier has wrote an article called Cyberpunk Managers Still Win Big Bonuses After Shoddy Game Launch. I highly recommend that everyone goes and reads that, because it highlights just how bullshit bonuses are, unless you're a fucking board member. It seems basically that the devs who actually crunched to make this game will not be getting the bonuses that they promised, but the board members certainly fucking will be, and something like 28 million is being allocated to 850 employees, which would be probably a pretty good bonus if it were distributed evenly, but also another 28 million is being allocated to just 5 board members. Yeah. So absolutely fuck that. Quite frankly, it's fucking disgusting considering how bad that game is launched. So everyone should go and read it, and fuck TDPR.
Fuck capitalism.
Fuck capitalism. This is a real socialist program, as it turns out all of a sudden, Liz. And final shout out number 6, the official PlayStation Magazine UK has retired and is going to be relaunched as Play Magazine with the same editorial staff. So you were actually telling me, Lewis, is that basically the PlayStation licenses ran out and they've not renewed it. So they're going to be a multi-platform magazine from now on. But for a gamer in the UK, a PlayStation gamer in the UK specifically, that magazine really meant a lot. That magazine is why I care about video games in a huge way. Was reading that every single month, getting that demo every single month, playing a lot of different games. It was extremely informative in the gamer that I am today, you know what I mean? So to see it finally be, quotes, retired is genuinely quite sad. Genuinely.
Yeah,
quite
it really is. It's definitely earned its retirement. We both absolutely adored that magazine, particularly in that PS1, PS2 era. We would not have the knowledge of games that we have. We would not have played a lot of the games that we have had it not been for
Absolutely
that. So a wee cheer for official PlayStation Magazine's retirement, I think.
Absolutely. Cheers to the official PlayStation Magazine list. But it is now time for a beer, and then we'll be back for Topic of the Week. And we are back for Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is our play-along of FTL Faster Than Light. Now, FTL is the first game from Subset Games, their second game being Into the Breach, which was our very first ever play-along game, Lewis. It was made by a 2-man team, Matthew Davis and Justin Ma. The game was kickstarted in 2012, making over $200,000, 20 times what they originally sought, and was eventually released in September 2012. The game is a top-down, real-time strategy roguelike. You take control of a ship with a crew with an important message to relay to the Federation. The roguelike nature of the game basically means that you have one run to get through 8 areas, fighting many ships along the way. The actual gameplay is built on a huge number of systems, from weapons and shields to drones and teleporters, all of which you have to upgrade and use in the most optimum way in order to give you the best chance at success. Now, Lewis, I would usually ask you what you thought of the game, but I've decided I'm going first.
Okay.
I thought that this game was incredibly well designed. Very, very tight. Absolutely fantastic overlapping systems. Incredibly complex, really, when you burrow down to it, and everything just married so well in terms of game balance. Incredibly good in that aspect. However, I enjoyed almost no part of playing this game. I also have to say that this play-along game is probably the one I poured the most hours into, and it is the first one that I didn't finish before we spoke about it on this game, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, and I lost interest by the end. And that sounds terrible to say, but it basically comes down to the fact that I don't really like roguelikes. I think that is where the buck stops, effectively, because everything else about this game is fantastic. And the thing is that I was playing through this game and I was really appreciating a lot of what it was doing. And I was thinking, God, this is really good, but with zero enthusiasm. I just had no enthusiasm whatsoever to play it. And for me, that's just a taste thing. It really is. Your thoughts?
I think, well, I guess, I should say first as well, I haven't beaten it, but not for, kind of the opposite reasons to you, actually. I didn't put as many hours in as I would have liked to, and as I was hoping to. It was just a much busier week and weekend than normal life has been recently, but I really do enjoy it. Similarly, I think it's well designed, it looks great, it sounds great. For anyone who hasn't played it and doesn't know anything about it, it's sort of like a really deep and complex version of Battleships, the traditional old tabletop game, when you're when you're in the midst of it. And I guess like we should in a second come back and explain or really what a roguelike is and what it is about it that you don't like. But I would say that from where I am at the moment, having not beaten the final boss, I'm really enjoying it. I want to put more time into it. It's probably the first play-along game that we've played, other than Kentucky Route Zero for totally different reasons, but that I have wanted to continue playing long after we've talked about it because, well, one, I want to beat it, and two, I still don't feel like I've got through all of the depth that it has. But to me, like, I really like strategy games. I really like that side of it. I have to agree, I don't love elements of the roguelike nature, but I was never sat there playing it thinking, like, I'm not enjoying this, and I'm interested in why that was for you.
Well, it was entirely the roguelike bits.
Yeah.
The strategy bit, the actual in-battle moments are great. They're really, really good, I think, anyway. The problem is all the rest of it round about that. Do you know what I mean? It's the fact that, oh well, where will I go next in this area? I've got various points to choose from. Does it matter where I go? I mean, not really. It's all entirely random. I'll give you an example of what really annoyed me about it. So I actually, on my third run, got all the way to the final boss, and in actual fact got to the second phase of the boss. I subsequently realised that was possibly the luckiest run in history. However, I did on my third run get all the way to the second phase of the final boss. And I thought, oh man, I'm an absolute fucking god here. Like, this is a piece of piss, this game. On the very next run to that, I was dashing around everywhere. I was trying to go to as many locations in each area as I could without the enemy fleet catching up to you, which is just this sort of reverse Fortnite circle that's slowly coming out towards you, pushing you to one end of the map and subsequently onto the next area. But I was going to as many as possible. I got no decent weapons whatsoever. I got one crew member who subsequently died during another event. I believe I then lost another crew member doing something stupid happened, and I was just like, oh, fuck you, game. Do you know what I mean? And I think I died in maybe the fourth area or something like that after having got all the way to the final boss fight in the run before. And I was just thinking, I didn't do anything differently. Like, I'd done it exactly the same. And this is what frustrates me about roguelikes, is that I think roguelikes like to think that they are forcing you to just get better and better and better and better and better. And eventually your skill is the thing that is improving to get you through the game. But when you throw so many random elements into that formula, it's not that. It becomes luck-based. Your skill level becomes secondary to the amount of good rolls of the dice that you have effectively, or for normal players anyway. I'm sure there are people that have burrowed way down into these systems and know exactly the right thing to do in any given scenario. But on like a normal playthrough, it's just not like that. And whether or not you succeed or fail is entirely luck-based as far as I'm concerned. Don't get me wrong, I improved as well, and when I did get a good run, I was able to go confidently further, and I ended up fighting the boss maybe 5 times or something like that, I would say. Which, by the way, is 1,000 times harder than the entirety of the rest of the game. Like, fighting the final boss is so much more difficult, which again I think is a problem. So really stressful and difficult to get to the final boss. But then you get to the final boss, and the final boss is so much more difficult than any other thing that you've faced. It's like a big massive fuck you. Or you struggle to get here, all your resources are depleted. I hope that you've got all those good rolls of the dice to get great guns and whatever, and you've got all your systems powered up the way that you wanted to, and you've not had to spend money on various other things because dumb stuff has happened throughout the run. Just to get to the final boss and go, yeah, so if all that's not went your way, then you're going to die now and you need to start again. And actually, Dead Cells, another roguelike that I sort of didn't like anywhere near as much as anyone else did, it seemed, suffered exactly the same problem, is that the rest of the game sort of became trivial until you got to the final boss, and then you died unless you were given really nice upgrades or were like ludicrously good at the game, which again most people aren't. So it's either you pour in a massive amount of hours to get exceptionally good at the game and learn it so well, doing this repeated motion over and over and over and over and over again, or you get extremely lucky. That, I'm willing to bet, is how most people beat the game the first time. And the first one of those, I don't have the time to do it, and I'm really not interested in doing it for that length of time. This is a very good game for what it is, but I'm not interested in playing it for 90 hours. I'm absolutely not doing that. I was, quite frankly, I was pretty bored after 15. And secondly, relying on purely luck to get you through fights is not something I respond well to in video games, I will say.
Yeah, I mean,
but that again, like, I don't want to. I've sort of done what I didn't want this discussion to devolve into, which is why I don't like roguelikes. Not specifically talking about this game, but I actually just really don't like roguelikes very much, and therefore I really didn't respond very well to this game. And subsequently, it's hard for me to praise it for doing something that I simply as a matter of taste just don't really like that much, you know?
For sure.
Not saying that the game isn't designed well, because it absolutely is, and it's very clear that it is very tightly designed by people that very much know what they're doing. But nonetheless, the end product isn't something that I myself enjoy.
Yeah, I think that you're right to say that, like, you can't avoid talking about the roguelike nature of it if you're having a discussion like this, because if you don't enjoy that, or if you really bounce off that hard, then that will colour your experience of the game, even if you love every other aspect of it, like you say, like you like the combat and you like the kind of strategy elements and stuff. So just, yeah, for anyone who is a bit unclear, like, we're talking about randomly generated encounters, randomly generated enemies. Basically, the game plays out completely differently every time, and every time that you die on a run, you start again from the beginning with none or very little progress carried forward. I mean, you can unlock some other ships and some other character layouts and stuff like that, but that's basically it. As you say, Mark, you know, you can put in a great run and do really well and really build your own skills, but it might not matter in the end, because you might come up against something that just catches you off guard in some way or another, and then you're forced to start again and it's all gone. And I get that frustration with it totally. I mean, that is my biggest frustration with it as well. I think it's at times the random generation, particularly of those elements even outside of battles. So at one of these, you know, you land at a beacon and you're just given a kind of an incident rather than a fight, and one of them that I had was like, I opened a pod thing and it just killed one of my guys, and I could not have known that was
that's exactly
happen.
what happened to me on the run, where it also gave me no fucking crew members. So I was just down a crew member, and the game seemingly refused due to bad rolls of the dice. I never got any more, and that was me. I was just down a crew member, and that was that.
And you have to just roll with that stuff. I mean, that very early on when I was playing it, I messaged you, obviously off air, and was kind of saying, like, I'm really enjoying this, but it is difficult. And then when you messaged me back, you know, the next day saying, oh, I've just got to the final boss on my third run, I was like, Jesus Christ, like, what am I doing wrong? But it does come down in a lot of ways to luck. And the flip side, in some senses, is those amazing stories that it can generate. So I had a run where very early on I had got into a bad fight, and, you know, I had not got new weapons. I'd barely got any scrap to buy upgrades for my ship. So I got decimated, and I think I lost a guy at that point. And anyway, I kind of staggered on and was like just scraping through fights and running from a lot of fights. I ran out of fuel. It's the only time it's happened to me, but it happened multiple times on this run where I completely ran out of fuel, and what you have to do then is just switch on an emergency light and just wait, and, you know, you can see the rebels coming closer and closer, and you're basically hoping that you will roll the dice and get more fuel or a store or whatever it might be. And I ended up limping on and rebuilding, and got like to the 6th stage or something, you know, and had basically rebuilt my ship and had managed to buy some stuff and had replenished my crew slightly, and then just got hammered on one fight by, you know, a couple of guys boarding me and a couple of lasers just catching me when my shields were down. You know, my shield room's on fire and some guy's dead. But I take quite a lot from that, actually. As a pain in the arse as it is, and don't get me wrong, it's so frustrating when you think you're having a good run and it all collapses, and it can collapse very quickly. But I like that there's that kind of self-generated story within it, because the game is lacking story otherwise, basically. I mean, it tells you at the start what you are and what you're running from, and I imagine at the end it will give you some sort of closure to that. But the rest of the game is actually just you and your experience of it, and I value that in this game and games like it. But I totally agree that it can be punishing, it can be cruel. If you compare it to Into the Breach, which is also a roguelike, but has a few more elements of progress being carried and just a slightly fairer balance, I think, at times as well. A lot less just kind of suddenly you've been fucked by something completely out of your control. I think that's where they improved from that game to Into the Breach, you know?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that one of the things that I enjoyed more about Into the Breach was that you had much more control over your environment and what you were doing and what was happening on screen and the consequences that you were going to face for certain things. While it was a roguelike, it had a lot less random elements that would absolutely fuck you. Do you know what I mean? That could totally end a run just because that was that. Do you know what I mean? You just happen to get a bad roll of the dice there, and now your run is over, and all that progress that you've done up until this point is basically being invalidated by this one bad roll of the dice. And I found that was happening to me in FTL quite a lot, whereas in Into the Breach, I'm not entirely sure I ever thought about that, you know?
No. And I beat Into the Breach pretty quickly, actually. I think, you know, on my 4th or 5th run, I completely beat that game, and this, you know, I've played it for hours and have had, I don't know how many runs in total, but plenty, and haven't come close to finishing it, really.
But the replayability of Into the Breach was so much better. Like, if you want someone to play your game again and again and again and again and again, do an Into the Breach where it's like easy to beat once, but then there's sort of new game plus elements to it as well, but also sort of like it is a continuation of the story and it all makes sense within the narrative and whatever. Into the Breach, what it did with its new games and whatever was incredibly clever, I thought. Like, I really enjoyed that part of it, and it lent itself to replayability so well without feeling samey, because it totally changed it up after that. Like, it gave you new characters and whatever, and FTL does this as well, like you were saying, you can get new ships and whatever. But to get to that point, to have like beat the game, is like so much repetitive actions over and over and over and over and over again, whereas Into the Breach just didn't feel like that ever. Like, although you are fighting similar battles a lot of the time, like what actually happens in those battles is very rarely the same, whereas in FTL, they do all feel a bit samey at a certain point, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, this is this kind of ship with this many shields, so I don't need to do this.
Yeah.
And then there's quite a lot of waiting around for your weapons to charge and whatever, so you're just sitting there at the beginning, like, get killed, just staring at one another, knowing exactly what you're going to do. And I don't know, it just felt very samey, whereas Into the Breach didn't feel that way to me at all. Like, I never thought that game was samey in the slightest, whereas I think that this one is, which is actually quite interesting. It's an interesting thing to think about why I think that, but this did feel as if it was like, oh, yep, same thing again, 15 hours in and it's still the same.
Well, I guess that is just because it makes you play more runs, really, and you know, the amount of progress you need to do to get forward.
But the runs are
greater.
long as well, man. They're fucking, like, it's not short. Like, if you want to be in a position to take on the final boss, like, you have to have done, I would say anywhere, for someone at my skill level, like, you have to have went to as many planets in every area that you are allowed to, basically, in order to get the resources to take on the final boss. And that takes a while. Like, that takes like a good amount of time. It's not as if like each run here is like 40 minutes or something like that. No, it can be like hours. Like, hours could have passed, and you get to the section before the final boss, somebody wipes you out, you've used all your resources, and you're just like, well, what's the fucking point? Like, there's not even any point in continuing on here, do you know what I mean? If I continue on, I'll just get wrecked in a second. And that is it just annoys me. But again, it's not a flaw with this game. It's really not a flaw with this game. It's a flaw that I have with roguelikes. This game in and of itself is designed very well. I think for its art style, it looks fucking great. I think, as you sort of briefly mentioned as well, is that the music in it as well is just like fantastic most of the time, really, as well. Nice. Yeah. There's a lot about this game that's really great. The actual strategy elements of the game I do like a lot as well. It's just all the other roguelite bits that I really don't like.
I mean, I agree in the sense that, you know, if you could put out a version of this which was a bit more arcadey and was basically just like jumping into these battles time after time, and or like a post-game, a new game plus, where once you've beaten the final boss, you can just fly around the galaxy doing fights and kind of trying to upgrade your ship in different ways, and, you know, and trying different builds and stuff. Even like if it could let you then attach different weapons to your ship to begin with, so that you can, to be honest, even if some of that was randomly generated, rather than having fixed ships to begin with, you might get a run where you start with a ship that has a brilliant cannon but no shield power or something like that, so that you just have to play in a completely different way. Then that sameness would be gone, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong there, yeah, definitely.
That's kind of what I mean. I feel like if you played this and, you know, if you went right now and played Into the Breach, you could probably quite quickly see all of the areas that they thought their original game, FTL, was a bit samey, or ways to improve that roguelike nature. And I think that, you know, we mentioned Returnal earlier, obviously, and it feels to me like Returnal is also learning lessons from all this as well, because... Well,
the fact that I have that in the post is slightly concerning to me now, because I've just reignited deep within me why I do not like roguelikes. And I've just ordered one, so...
And the one thing about FTL in comparison is that it does have a save and quit, because I was playing some runs quite late at night where I was just like, what happens here if I need to stop? If I just lost all of this? And you just have quite a smart wee... It's a save and quit, so the game stops immediately, and when you boot it back up, it takes you straight back there and it erases your save file, so you can't cheat it in any way, you know what I mean? And it seems mad to me that Housemarque haven't built that into Returnal, because it does feel like you need some ability to get out of a roguelike without wasting your time, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that is entirely madness that Returnal doesn't have a save. But anyway, Lewis, I have, as of yet, to be won over by roguelikes, I've got to say.
Interesting.
However, we will have to call it a day there. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PLAYERSTOO.com. And if you could give us 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, it really, really helps us out. I know I say this twice a week, every single week, but it does not become less important on a weekly basis. And while you're over there as well, if you could leave us a little review, again, it just helps us out even more. And thank you, genuinely thank you to anyone that's already done that for us. It really does mean a lot. And Lewis, it's now time to announce our next play-along game for this month, and it will be Katana Zero, a game that you have played, but I have not.
Indeed it is, yeah. I played Katana Zero, I don't know, about a year ago now. I think it was quite early in lockdown I played that. Really liked it. I will play it again, or at least play sections of it again in full, because it's got some really great kind of combat puzzles. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what you think of that, because I think it'll be up your street, and I don't think that you're all that convinced by it yet, so I hope to see a wee change there.
I'm not massively convinced by it yet. Not that I think that it's bad, I'm just a bit like... I'm not amped about it, you know?
Yeah, it's just not something you were massively excited about at any point, yeah.
Yeah. And not that it's bad. What I will say is that I've listened to the Katana Zero soundtrack, and that is absolutely fucking banging.
Exactly.
But I've not actually played the game yet. But I am looking forward to it, man. I definitely am looking forward to it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Thanks.